And speaking of requiring a lot of thought, I want to turn to Tarkovsky's Stalker.
Mm.
Now I read that a lot of filmmakers and celebrities and actors have cited Tarkovsky as one of their favorites. And I remember watching a Criterion video with Jude Law, because Criterion's when the celebrities go into that closet with DVDs and they
Yeah.
pick like movies. So Jude Law goes into into that closet where he picks a DVD, and one of the movies he picks is Stalker by Tarkovsky, and he
Hmm.
cites it as one of his favorite films. And 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 this was after I watched Solaris. I'm like, huh, that's very interesting. So I watch Stalker, and the first hour of the movie makes absolutely no sense. But as you get closer and closer to the end, when the stalker has that breakdown and he cries, a light bulb goes off, and you're like, wow, like this is all of it makes sense now. Everything that we've seen just builds up to that point, to that collapse. So so I want to start off with our discussion on Stalker. Is this a movie that you enjoy, or is this a movie that kind of confuses you like all other Tarkovsky films? How familiar with you are you with this movie?
I've seen Stalker a few times before. Um, I can assure you, the very first time I saw it, I probably was a teenager, and I thought it was the most boring film
Yeah,
that was ever made. I don't get it. I don't understand. It looks boring. It looks depressing, and I just, couldn't stand it. But then I kept, the older I got, I kept coming back to it because, as you said, every successful film director or an actor, actress, they all bring Stalker and Tarkovsky films as their inspiration to becoming filmmakers. Um, so I kept coming back to it, and the more I watch it, the more I understand why it's one of his masterpieces. You know, um, and it is a sci-fi, but we don't really see, you know, aliens. We don't see any, any sci-fi elements, so to speak.
hmm
But we do know that these three men are going to a forbidden zone that's kind of protected by the government, and you're not allowed to enter. But the reason why they're going there, because in that zone there is a room where your deepest desires and your dreams come true, right?
right.
So and they don't know if this place was visited by aliens, or they said there was a meteorite that fell in there and destroyed all the villages.
Yeah, they're very ambiguous as to where it comes from. They just know that
Yeah,
it exists.
yeah, yeah. Um, so every time I watch it with kind of new eyes, and I see new elements to it. Besides the fact that it tackles big themes, why are we here? What's our purpose? What is our what are our deepest desires, and what are we willing to do to achieve those desires, and what are we willing to sacrifice to get what we want in life, whatever it is, greater love, money, success. I mean, I don't know. So all those big themes, and are we alone in this universe? Is there someone else? And um, is there some sort of magic that's somewhere around us, but we don't know how to get there? Um, you know. So besides all of those themes that kind of make you stop and think, the way the director executes the film, the shots, long lingering shots, the long tracking shots and dollying shots, which wasn't very common in the 70s, and at that time, I think.
Yeah,
Just the technicality of it, the sliding into the window and the shot keeps going. I think that's one of the things why a lot of directors are inspired by Tarkovsky films, because technically it's very affecting.
right.
It's very efficient. And then, the way he selects the settings, the woods and the abandoned buildings and the water trickling down and the pipe that they walk through and stuff like that, also kind of takes you out of your day, if you're watching, and takes you somewhere else, takes you to a place that otherwise you wouldn't go.
Well, it's
You
very
know?
well. That's the thing because it looks very familiar, but there's something alien about it too. Because
Mm,
and I'll say this, like the start of the movie, like it's very stark, it's very brutalist because it's not black and white, but it's very like sepia toned, right? So
yes.
I was gonna say it kind of reminds me of The Wizard of Oz because you remember in that movie, Dorothy when she's living in Kansas is very sepia toned. There's no color or anything, but as soon as she goes into Oz, there's color everywhere. If
Mhm.
I'm not, and I'm not sure if Tarkovsky, did it intentionally or if it was just something that kind of like came to him gradually. But I think that works perfectly because of the fact that here's this guy who's living a very stark Spartan lifestyle. He's he's living with the wife who has pretty much been left alone to take care of their daughter because I think he was in prison for 5 years,
Yeah.
and then he agrees to take Professor and Writer, like these two guys, into the zone. And as soon as they enter, you would think it was something extraordinary or magical, but it's just as it's just as run down, it's just as brutal, it's just as harsh as the world that they came from,
Mhm.
which I thought was just magnificent. What did you think about that?
Yeah, there is a contrast, right? Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and the comparison with the Wizard of Oz is great, I think, because yes, we see his day-to-day life with his wife in some, I don't even know, the shack, apartment, house. I don't even know what it is,
Yeah,
but
I don't.
it's
It's
super
very run
wet.
down.
Yeah, it's very run down. The walls are scuffed. There's the water somewhere. It feels damp. Like I want to turn on my heater and get a blanket or something. But once they get right, once they get to the zone, yes, it is all run down, but there's a lot of green in it. Like the grass is super lush, and the trees and the woods. There's even flowers there, so there's more color in there. So it's most likely a metaphor that this particular three men find that forbidden place more desirable than their own day-to-day lives. You know, our lives
Yeah,
are difficult, and then they enter this magical place that might grant their wishes, and it's just more colorful and enjoyable.
yeah, and I was gonna say because because to your point, like Tarkovsky is famous or infamous for his long shots.
Mhm.
So what we see probably like in the first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie, it's just them just trying to get through the barrier.
Yeah.
So they're going through this process of having to get into the Jeep, and then they're driving around to avoid the guards, and then they're driving to all these rundown places. And
Yeah.
and I had to rewatch that opening part earlier today because at first I was a little bit confused about that, and I was like, "This serves no purpose. Like you could have just done probably like a few shots of them evading the guards, and then they get in, and that's it."
Mhm.
So so seeing that process, you kind of you kind of build this anticipation that maybe they may not succeed, maybe something
Mm.
happens, or maybe the movie goes in an entirely different direction. Now we both know that's not the case because they do end up going into the zone, but
Yeah.
when you first watch, you're a bit confused about that opening part because especially in your case because you're a filmmaker. I mean, you would think it's a little bit excessive, really. Like you don't really need to stretch it out that much.
Mm. Right, right, right. Yeah, and I think that's his unique trait, that's his trademark. Nothing is rushed, you know. And
Yeah,
it also makes me believe as a viewer that it is a difficult place to get through. That's why it
yeah,
took so long, because they had to go through here, and then they had to go through here, and then there's the guard on the motorcycle, and it takes a long time to get there. And also that shot of them on a rail cart where he
yeah.
goes from one to another to the third. It's really a long shot. And you're like, wow, why does it need to be so long? But I guess it's just paint a picture of that's how long it takes to get there. That's how difficult it gets to get it. And it's very hectic. You don't know where you're going, and they have to go here, and people are shooting at them, and um, yeah. But that,
But you
but
al-
but
But
that very
you
long. Yeah.
but I was gonna say you also get to see just how valuable the stalker is because he knows the tricks of the guards, and he kind of knows how to time it just right to where they can follow the train through these gates and kind of get into the barrier. Um, so so I do want to talk a little bit about the three characters because they're very peculiar. Because you've got the stalker, who's basically the guide who's leading them into the zone. You've got Professor, and then you've got Writer, and both of these men, they're pretty unhappy with their lives, so they're banking on the fact that if they go into the room, they can find the remedy to what ails them, and they can live much more happier lives. But the stalker tells the story of Porcupine, um,
Mhm.
and he talks about how Porcupine, managed to get into the room and got what he wanted, but then he hanged himself afterwards.
Right.
So you kind of get the feeling that, right off the bat, that the room isn't exactly what you would imagine it to be. Um,
Hmm.
and what's fascinating too is that they keep talking about, oh, the room is this great thing, like it's going to fix all of our problems, but we really don't know too much about that, really.
Hmm. Right, right, right. Yeah, there is a moment where I had to kind of slow down and really pay attention to what they were saying. There's a lot of things said at the bit closer to the end when Stalker breaks down and he talks about Porcupine and what happened. So the room basically grants you a wish that you think you want. I think
Hmm.
I want financial success. I think I want to be wealthy. But what is it that is truly that I what is this the deep down, what is it that I really want?
Hmm.
It's not to be wealthy. It's, I don't know, maybe to be accepted or to be admired, to be loved. I don't know. So but the porcupine got the wish that he thought he wanted. He wanted to be wealthy, so he got all this money. But in reality, that's not really what he needed to be happy. So I
Hmm.
think I think that's the also one of the many messages that this film kind of bears, that what we think we want on the surface is not really something that we need to be truly happy.
And it's funny too because we discussed Autumn Marathon a few minutes ago, where we're talking about a character who refuses to change and refuses to be honest with himself.
Yeah.
I think what's so fascinating is the fact that you have this room that is willing to grant you whatever wish you want. And I think it's either writer or professor who mentions it later in the film, where you kind of have to bare your soul. So in other
Mhm.
words, you have to be brutally honest with yourself in order to ask the room what you want. Because I think with Porcupine, he said he wanted. I think what originally happened was his brother got killed, and he goes to the room and asks for his brother to come back. But deep
Mhm.
down, he didn't care about his brother. He just wanted
Mhm.
the money. And then with the guilt of having taken the money but not gotten his brother back, that's why he ended up doing what he did. You know.
Right. Guilt killed him. Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and that's another thing too, because you also get to see the trials that they go through, because the stalker pretty much explains, that um, isn't just a place; it's a living thing. It's kind of like Solaris, really, because Solaris is this ocean planet that's very sentient, that can probe our
Hmm.
thoughts and manifest our innermost desires. You see a similar theme going on here, where it's like the zone isn't just a place, it's a living thing. And I remember when Ryder, when they're in the zone, he tries to pluck one of the plants, and, and he like and Stalker just like yells at him, and I think he throws a pipe or something at him to get him to stop, because
Hmm.
he's like, if you do one wrong thing, you'll never make it out if you're alive.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. The zone is alive, and it's full of traps. That's why he keeps throwing that metal nut with a gauze attached to it.
Hmm.
Um, and so the porcupine's brother was killed by that pipe that they go through, that turns into a meat grinder at some point.
Yeah.
If I think if your intentions are not um, kind or honest, then the zone kind of kills you somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the zone is full of traps, and he's the only one who knows how to get around them. That's a very interesting concept. Yeah.
But I was going to say too, because as you're wandering through the zone, like what you see isn't exactly what you get. And Stalker even says, the room is right there, but we can't take the shortest path. We got to take this long circuitous path because there aren't as
Mhm.
many dangers as he says.
Right.
And I was going to say too, because you almost get this feeling like where the journey itself is an opportunity for you to kind of examine yourself and see what if this is something that is worth going through.
Mm.
Because when you look at the whole place, I mean, you would think that the zone is like a magical, area that's very clean and pristine, but it isn't. It's very dirty. It's very run down. There are just like bits and pieces all over the place, right? And
Yeah.
there's nothing living. And I think they even say, the flowers grow here, but you can't smell anything.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, and there's some skeletons there at some point. There's the dog running around that probably stayed there because the dog's owners died there. Um, yeah, very interesting. And also, you had the message I got from the whole point of what we have to go around because it's safer as opposed to just straight right there because the room is right there is
Yeah.
if there's something that you desire, you have to be patient with it. It's not
Yeah.
from A to B. You have to find your way to it as opposed to just darting to it. So that's how I understood it, that you have to be patient with things that you really value in your life, and the right things will happen if you just slow down. And yeah.
Well, it's also very theological too, and I would
Mm,
say
yeah.
because I've only seen 2 Tarkovsky movies so far, but I would say, I would say Stalker surprisingly is the most theological out of all of his movies because the themes and the themes of the movie, especially when he rails on the fact that people don't have any faith, and that's why they can't get to the room. It just speaks to the fact that there's more to it than it simply being a science fiction movie, like you said. But what I also find pretty interesting is the fact that not only are these people who have to be honest with themselves and figure out what do I really want and is this something that I really really desire, but I kind of get the feeling, and please feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong. I feel like what Tarkovsky is doing is sort of saying, "Hey, we live in a society where God, is absent." Because the Soviet Union was infamous for being an atheistic state.
Hmm.
I think what Tarkovsky is doing is saying, us just living for ourselves isn't the way to go. We really need to, reach for something higher than ourselves. Call it whatever you will, aliens or
Yeah.
God or whatever, but we need something much higher than ourselves because it allows us to confront what is within us and therefore make us better people.
Если бы только знали, как я устал. Одному Богу известно. А еще называют себя интеллигентами, эти писатели, ученые.
Успокойся.
Они же не верят ни во что. У них же орган этот, которым верят, атрофировался.
Успокойся.
За ненадобностью.
Перестань. Пойдем, ты ляг. Не надо. Ты ляг. Ты здесь сыро, тебе здесь нельзя. Сними.
Боже мой, что за люди?
Успокойся. Успокойся, они же не виноваты. Их пожалеть надо, а ты сердишься.
Ты же видела их, у них глаза пустые. Они ведь каждую минуту думают о том, чтобы не продешевить, чтобы продать себя подороже, чтобы им все оплатили, каждое душевное движение. Они знают, что не зря родились, что они призваны. Они ведь живут только раз. Разве такие могут во что-нибудь верить?
Успокойся. Не надо. Постарайся уснуть, а? Усни.
И никто не верит. Не только эти двое. Никто. Кого же мне водить туда? Господи. А самое страшное, что не нужно это никому. Никому не нужна эта комната. И все мои усилия ни к чему.
Ну, зачем ты так? Не надо.
Не пойду я туда больше ни с кем.
Ну, хочешь, я пойду с тобой? Туда. Хочешь?
Куда?
Думаешь, мне не о чем будет попросить?
Нет. Это нельзя.
Почему?
Нет, нет. А вдруг тебе тоже ничего не выйдет?
Yeah. Yeah, you have,
which I think is the metaphor of the journey and them undergoing these trials to finally get to that point, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not the first time he touches those themes. And he in his interviews he mentioned God, and I never thought that he was a religious person. I don't know if he was a religious person, but he definitely considered those things. You know, he definitely um, thought about those things. He thought about is there anyone besides humans out there? You know, is it God? Is it aliens? Is it something else? And absolutely, yeah. And that's definitely one of the themes in Stalker as well, for sure.
And he also like quotes the Bible too, because I remember he does quote from the book of Revelations at one point when they're resting in the meadow. I was gonna say like so when they finally so they undergo the trial, so they have to survive, you know, these tunnels and having to deal with all these different trials and tribulations. But when they get to the room, you know, the professor kind of reveals he's got a bomb in there, and his intention is to blow up the room. Now, what I think is kind of funny is the fact that you see this telephone there, it rings. So when it rings the first time, Ryder answers, it's like, oh no, this isn't a clinic, and then he hangs up. But then Professor takes the phone and he calls a colleague of his and basically, you know, talks about, hey, you know, I'm here, I'm going to blow it up, and you're all going to be sorry about this. I was a little confused about that scene. Did that make sense to you at all? Because I wasn't sure if that was a real phone call he was making, or if that was just the room, you know, doing another one of those trials to kind of see what's going on with, you know, in their heads.
The way, yeah, the phone is interesting choice. The way I understood that part is that being in a zone brings out your deepest insecurities, your deepest fears, your deepest desires, and at that moment, when he was calling his colleague, and we find out that there were competing colleagues, that I think he had an affair with his wife or something like that. So that call was caused by a room somehow, right? It brought up his deepest kind of the anger that he was carrying towards this person, and that competitiveness that he suffers in relation to that colleague of his. And I think that's what the call means, because if you hear what the other guy on the other end says to him, he keeps pushing his buttons. He keeps telling him, "You're still a loser. You know, why? Just because I slept with your wife, you're still holding on to it, and you're not. What are you trying to achieve? Why are you going there? You know, you're gonna get in trouble. I'll get you in trouble." So I think the room brought that all up.
Yeah,
Trauma.
yeah. So basically, it was another trial, really. And then when they finally get to the room, it's like they come to the realization maybe we shouldn't go in after all.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was a bit frustrated at first because I'm like you guys survived this entire trial of going through the zone, and then at the last minute you're like, yeah, we're not going to go in. And you kind of have to wonder, I mean, is it just because they've come to the realization of who they are as people, and they've come to make peace with themselves, or is it just they believed the story about Porcupine, and they're like, I don't want the same thing to happen to me? And you kind of get the feeling it's kind of all of the above, really. Like any reason you pick would be a valid reason for why they didn't go in.
Right, absolutely. They all went. The writer and the professor went there with a certain goal, and maybe the professor is the one who kind of held on to his original goal, which is to blow up this place, right? So nobody has
sort of, because he drops the bomb later on.
Right. He doesn't. Yeah, he dismantles it. But yeah, you're right. Like if we all approached our goals and desires this way, where you have to go through something and kind of think about it, it might change. Let's say if you want to be successful at something, successful at your job, let's say, what is it that you really want? Why? I guess the question is why. Why do you want it? Why do you want to be successful at your job? Maybe because you want to be loved. Maybe there's something missing. There's a void in your life. I think it's an interesting. You're right. It's kind of like I want to see what they really wanted, and I want to see it come true, because that's the magic that's the promise of the film, right? Once they arrive in the room, their wishes will come true, but they don't, because perhaps we just have to accept who we are, and that's our reward, just being who we are and where we are.
And I really like that moment that Stalker has where he breaks down and he says, I can't go into the room because, I need the zone. Like, this is all that I have.
Он же хочет это уничтожить. Он же надежду вашу хочет уничтожить. Отдайте! Ведь ничего не осталось у людей на земле больше. Это ведь единственное место, куда можно прийти, если надеяться больше не на что. Ведь вы же пришли. Зачем же уничтожаете веру? Помолчи! Я же тебя насквозь вижу. Плевать ты хотел на людей. Ты же деньги зарабатываешь на нашей тоске. Да не в деньгах даже дело. Ты же здесь наслаждаешься. Ты же здесь царь и бог. Ты, лицемерная гнида, решаешь, кому жить, а кому умереть. Он еще выбирает, решает. Я понимаю, почему ваш брат-сталкер сам никогда в комнату не входит. А зачем? Вы же здесь властью упиваетесь, тайной, авторитетом. Какие уж тут еще могут быть желания? Это неправда, неправда. Вы ошибаетесь. Сталкеру нельзя входить в комнату. Сталкеру вообще нельзя входить в зону с корыстной целью.
You know, and you shouldn't take it away from me because this is the only thing that's keeping me alive, really.
Right.
And you come, well, at least for me, you come to realize that, you know, there's a reason. That's the reason why he doesn't go into the rooms, because he already has what he needs. And you also feel for the guy too, because I think they even say like he's a useless idiot or something, like he can't do anything else. This is his only thing. Because and it's just so interesting too, because you don't know anything about him for like the first 50 minutes of the movie.
Mhm.
You know, even when you see him with his family, it's like you really don't know that much about him. But like as you see him progress, like you begin to have a bit more understanding. Oh, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. He knows the traps, and he knows how to, you know, get you through this. But I also, and we mentioned this earlier, but when he has that breakdown at the end where he's like crying about how people don't have any faith, you kind of have to wonder how many times has he led people into the zone, and how many times has he seen, like, you know, countless other people kind of follow the same path as Professor and Ryder, you know?
Mm. Yeah, it looks like he's done it many times, and that's why he went to jail, because it's illegal to lead people there.
Yeah.
He does get paid for it. I don't think it was a lot, but he does it for a fee.
Yeah.
And you're right. He thrives in the zone. That's his comfort zone. That's the place where he is fulfilled. Meaning, like, he can be his best. He doesn't know how to be with his wife and their mutant child who doesn't have legs. He doesn't know how to navigate that, but he knows how to navigate the zone, and therefore that's the only place where he feels he has some power and some contribution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when he breaks down, you do feel for him, because he does say that everyone considers him as this loser and miserable, and they all think he's stupid, and he doesn't have any friends, and he has difficulty connecting to people, and he's basically just like an outcast in the world, except when he's in the zone, he's the leader. In
Right.
the zone, he can lead.
It's a sense of power that he and they even
Yeah.
allude to that later on when they had that scuffle. What I really love at the end is when they go back, when they go back to the regular world. Like, it starts off sepia, but then you start seeing flashes of color. And by the end of the movie, when he's walking with his daughter back to their place, it's in the color shot. But then when he goes back, back home, it's back to the same. So everything kind of like comes full circle in there.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's just a reminder that no matter what happens, nothing really changes. He goes back to the same life that he's lived before, and most likely he's gonna undergo the same journey as before. And I'll even add this. I kind of get the feeling that he's sort of like the prophets of the Old Testament, really. Because the prophets of the Old Testament, they were famous for having to tell people, you need to have faith, you need to change your ways and repent and turn back to God. But nobody believes them. And I think one prophet, he gets thrown into a well and left there to die. So you kind of see the Stalker as a prophet, or as one of them calls him, God's fool. Because he's trying to make people see, like, the zone isn't just this thing. It's not just a vending machine that will make your life happy. It's more than this. But nobody wants to listen. I kind of get the feeling he's functioning as a prophet for the zone, but just like with the prophets in the Bible, nobody really takes him seriously. They only take him seriously up to a point, and then they just go back to their regular lives,
Yeah, you're right. Throughout the whole trip there, they don't take him seriously. They think he's uneducated. They think he's small-minded. They do think he's power tripping. Especially one of them when he says, "No, we have to go around. We cannot just go straight." He still goes straight because he just doesn't. He doesn't instill trust in them. And I think they do mention it's the way he looks and the way he moves. It's just he just exudes misery himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I can sort of understand why Tarkovsky, made this movie. It's because he wanted to make an unconventional science fiction film, and I think and I think he does a phenomenal job. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I read somewhere that when he passed away, it was because he was exposed to the elements while shooting Stalker. That's what I read somewhere, like, because he died from cancer, I think in '86 or something, and a lot of people speculate it's because the area he was shooting in was highly toxic and everything, and so he must have been exposed to like chemicals or something like that, and that that kind of led to his eventual passing. But I would say, but I would say in the grand scheme of things, it was well worth it because he gave us a film that was very, very thought provoking. It was very brutal, but it was very, very religious. He's holding a mirror up to you, and he's asking you, "Do you dare look into the mirror?" Really?
Yeah. You start walking away from the film. You start asking all these questions that you haven't thought about for a long, long time, and he definitely achieves that. And I love that he gives us a little element of sci-fi at the very end with where his mutant daughter moves glasses on the table with her mind.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, okay, thank God, there's some sci-fi in there.
Yeah, it also ties into the faith element too, because because in one of the Gospels Jesus says, if you have enough faith, you can move mountains, and when he rails on people not having faith, and his daughter is able to like move glasses and everything, it kind of shows maybe faith isn't completely lost. It just manifests itself quite differently in different people. It occurs in a way that you probably wouldn't least expect it.
Yeah, and also it kind of proves for anyone who's watching the film and they think, oh, this Stalker is just making everything up, because we don't really see anything,
Yeah, exactly. He's just throwing random stuff around.
Yeah, just because he says it works here this way, I mean, we don't get any proof of it. We don't see porcupine. We don't know anything. But at the very end, when his daughter moves the glasses with her mind over the table, they're like, oh, that was all true then. He wasn't lying, And that's why his daughter is a mutant, because he goes there very often, and it caused his daughter to be born without legs, and she can move objects with her mind. Yeah.
I mean, she can move in a different way, just not with her legs.
Right. Exactly.
So